Okay, so we're being recorded, and first thing to do, of course, is to do the smart attendance. So your smart attendance number is 959. 959 is your smart attendance number. So just to show you that, 959, and so you can see it here. 959 is your smart attendance number, and I can put that into the chat function as well. So go to here. 959, go chat 959. Okay, 959. All right. So the I'm all excited about how I noticed that as I mentioned in my European Union policymaking class that Zoom has upgraded its software. So now you can do new things on Zoom, like for example, talk directly to people who are when they're in breakout rooms. And it's more clearly showing when I'm sharing screen. So that's a lot easier. So the world is continually getting better and better and better. And so on that note, let's go then to talk about let me see, I'm gonna have to close some files here because I think I got files open from previous class, and I'll close those and try to find the lesson plan, and that's not the one I want. Okay, so let me go like that and share screen. And here we go. No, that's not the right one. Sorry, just a second. I have to open up the lesson plan here. And lesson plan, there it is. And there we go. Okay, we go to Zoom, share screen. Okay, so there you see the debate topic. And to international students, America's Vietnam War was the main source of American left social movements today. And I'm wondering if we're going to have a similar issue as happened previously, that basically everybody's on one side of the issue and I'll have to be the other side. Well, let's see where you fit on this scale. So let's go back to the voting screen and go back to that here, and there, like that. You see did you see that screen there? You see that in this little screen here, so you can see the screen that you're sharing. So it's a lot less confusing than it used to be. Zoom used to be when you tried to screen share, because sometimes it would, anyway. So we go to vote and click here. So let me ask you to identify yourself so that I know which groups you're all in. So please vote on whether or not the Vietnam War was the main source of American left social movements today. And so please vote on that. And so far, one person's voted. What about Ki Pyong-ku has voted? Everybody else votes, so I know what groups you're in, so that we can get to the debate here in our short class. So please vote. Please vote. And 3, 4. What about the rest? Please vote. Okay, so is everybody going to be pro? Nobody's going to be con. So I guess that's where we're at right now. Is I'm going to be con because nobody else is con. And so since we have a small class, we give everybody a chance to speak, and I will pick somebody randomly to start off the debate. And you read my comments, right? I sent my comments about 6 or 7 hours ago back to you on your, so you read my comments, so you know basically what my starting points. Oh, we do have a con. We have Lee Chun-ho is going to be con. All right, Lee Chun-ho, it's you and me, Lee Chun-ho, against the world. Okay, so and so who's going to speak first? So I'm gonna pick randomly by using an American rhyme, old child's rhyme, to try to find somebody randomly rather than decide, because I don't have any coin to flip like I usually do, because I forgot to bring money with me, coins. So let me pick it like this. So eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a rabbit by his toe. If he hollers, let him go. We used to say when I was a smallest child, it wasn't rabbit. We used to use the N word to show you again what American culture was like, white working class culture was like. So eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a by his toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Now we say rabbit. So eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a rabbit by his toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So that's Im Che-yun. So Im Che-yun, you can read your pro statement.
Can you give me more time?
Okay. Let me pick another person. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a rabbit by his toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Yang Chi-yun. Yang Chi-yun, do you have your pro statement?
Yes.
Okay, read it, Yang Chi-yun.
So although some US soldiers are imprisoned in Vietnam, people believe that the US lost due to lack of effort. And this is because the US government partly believes it is better to take freedom away from the country in the case of the left wing in US because of the existence of the right wing side. So they should do so.
So the left social movements emerged because of the hostility and anger of the young people against the demands of their older generation, demanding they go fight and die in Vietnam. Okay, what about Yi Chun Ho for Khan? Yi Chun Ho, please read your con statement.
Well, America's Vietnam War was important to the people on the American left side. However, it is difficult to say that America's Vietnam War was the main source of American left social movements today. So I was thinking that the question was about today, and America's Vietnam War was the main source of America's left side social movement only for a few years right after the war ended, maybe a few decades, but not now. So people on the American left side in 21st century do not talk about America's Vietnam War anymore as much as 20th century. So I think America's Vietnam War was not the main source of American left social movements today.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the main argument against the argument that the Vietnam War was a main source of American left social movements today is that, you know, these new left social movements, they happened everywhere around the world. I mean, the Paris students, the French students were uprising in 1968, and they were not involved in any wars. They were not involved in a war at that time. The Algerian War was over several years before then. You know, there was protest movements in Czechoslovakia, right? The Prague Spring happened in 1968, which led to a rebellion against the ruling authorities. There were student unrest in Poland in 1968. They weren't involved in a Vietnam War. There was more student activism in West Germany at this time, right? That in other words, there was that but there's something obviously seems to be really important about the Vietnam War, because when the Vietnam War ended in the United States, in the American case, the protest movements pretty much died away. I mean, by the late 1980s, early 1990s, American young people in general were so conservative that, you know, they would vote. They were much more conservative. They were more conservative even than they were in the 1950s during the Joe McCarthy Red Scare case. You know, that they were more conservative at that by the time of Ronald Reagan and into the 1990s with the end of the Cold War, that it looks as if they were completely co-opted and suppressed as in terms of their inclination to protest and challenge the status quo in the United States. And I think part of that reason has to do with the fact that it was a very powerful argument that people like Daniel Flynn, right, was arguing that we won the Cold War, that supposedly Ronald Reagan and all of those conservative Republicans that were the targets of attacks by people like Howard Zinn were wrong, because we supposedly won the Cold War, so we were right. And the reason I keep mentioning this is because this overwhelming assumption that the United States did defeat a Russian version of Nazi Germany is, first off, it's still the prevailing view. I encountered it today at this conference I'm at right now. I just came from a panel that was dominated by we were talking about the Russia's war in Ukraine. And it was these same people that come to these conferences for many, many years that are older than me, that they were fighting the Cold War against the Soviet Union. And they're still arguing that Russia is basically an aggressive imperialist power, and we must not appease it in Ukraine. We must resist it. We must not try to compromise with it. And that view dominates, well, it dominates people on the left and the right. And it really makes the left movement in the US weak, because rightly or wrongly, these right-wing authority figures have claimed the victory of the Cold War as their great victory, their great contribution to freedom and democracy in America and around the world, because they supposedly maintained the will and determination to defeat this aggressive imperialist power, despite the student protests, despite the efforts of people like Howard Zinn and Noam Chomsky to undermine and question American fundamental values. Yeah, come in. Oh, somebody's knocking on my door. You know, I'm at this hotel, and I've got to keep my voice down. You know why? Because I just realized the rooms here at this hotel are separated just by a wooden door. That's like, this is a beautiful old hotel. It's an old hotel. It's beautiful, but it's old. And the rooms are separated just by closed wooden doors. So somebody just knocked on my door because I'm talking too loud. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. You know why I'm speaking too loud? Because I got these headphones on. And keep my voice down. Shit, I don't like doing that kind of stuff. It's an expensive hotel, you know. Usually when I stay in hotels, they got really thick walls, right? With you know, but this is an old, beautiful hotel, but the rooms are separated just by, you can see it here. They're just separated by wooden doors. You see the wooden door there? And there's another one over here. Gosh darn it. I'm embarrassed myself. But I think I was yelling because I had these headphones on. So I couldn't, it made me speak louder. So I pissed somebody off. Oh, well. Oh, well. What are you going to do? So I keep my voice down. So that was the situation, right? That America won the Cold War. And since America won the Cold War, that the right wing was correct, and the left, you know, they've got valid points, but they're fundamentally, their points are not fundamentally valid. Because if we had listened to them, we would have lost the Cold War. We won the Cold War in spite of them. And so I think you can still hear me, right? Even though I'm not shouting like I was before. So let me go back. I blame the headphones. I blame the headphones. That's what I blame. So who's going to speak next? So eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a rabbit by his toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Cho Chun Sok. Cho Chun Sok, are you there? Cho Chun Sok. You see, when I moved in this hotel room yesterday, there wasn't anybody in that room next door to me because I saw the person cleaning it out, the cleaning staff cleaning it out. But, oh, Jesus Christ. Anyway, so Cho Chun Sok, are you there? I don't think Cho Chun Sok's here. So what about Kim Pyong-koo? Kim Pyong-koo, please read your pro statement.
Yeah. After the Vietnam War, there's a lot of variety of people living in America, and President Johnson's decision was enough to be criticized by the United States citizen. And I think this can be seen as an example of the start of social movement. Living with various people and young citizens who are criticizing and showing their voices can be the good examples. So I think the Vietnam War can be the main source of American left social movement today.
So you think it yeah, I mean, yeah, but again, how do you respond to the fact that these kind of social movements broke out everywhere in the late 1960s, including in France and in Poland and in Czechoslovakia, and and in Germany, elsewhere? It happened everywhere, not just the United States. They happened in countries that were not involved in a war.
Yeah, but the question about the main source, I think
What?
I need to think about more about that.
Okay.
But,
Okay. And so let's see, who's next here? Yukon Bean. Read your pro statement.
So I agree that Vietnam War played a very crucial role, because the Vietnam War was a war that back in the days, the wealthiest and the most powerful nation losing to compared to United States, a tiny peasant country. And the reason that the United States went into war was to defeat nationalist revolutionary movement and to acquire peace. But this was enough to spark the beginnings of the left social movements. So it was just enough for people to talk about that United States can lose a war to someone who has such a great difference in military power, and that even the United States cannot do everything that they wish, even if they try their best in terms of military power.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the consequence is that basically the Vietnam War really polarized America, and that polarization is still going on today. And you could make the point that basically the Vietnam War has inhibited the development of the United States in terms of its inhibited, maybe, if you mean, like, for example, development of social democracy, because that victory, that supposed victory in the Cold War, that the United States won the Cold War, has been used to justify neoliberalism, like we were talking about in my European Union policymaking class, right? That the Soviet Union collapsed, the Soviet Union model is bad. The American model won because of Margaret Thatcher and her soulmate, Ronald Reagan, who came into power just a year after Margaret Thatcher and instituted those kinds of neoliberal policies. And those neoliberal conservative policies, they killed the Soviet Union. And so neoliberalism is good, because neoliberalism was the remedy to the sickness of communism. And so this has been used as a weapon to suppress leftist social democratic movements in the United States and elsewhere, because again, it was supposedly the neoliberals that saved the world. I mean, I'm slightly exaggerating, but that Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan were the ones who instituted neoliberal policies after the failures of the Socialist Labour Party in Great Britain, governments under that and the, like we talked about in the European Union policymaking class, and the Democratic government under Lyndon Johnson, and then under Jimmy Carter, that their socialist policies were not what saved America. It was neoliberalism. And that has always been a source of weakness, that vulnerability for the new left, because it comes back to this notion, however, I don't think that the Soviet Union was a Russian version of Nazi Germany. I don't think the Soviet Union was perceiving opportunity, degeneracy, an opportunity to expand and dominate Europe and the world the way Hitler and Nazi Germany did. I think the Cold War was due to mutual misperception of threat, that both sides are trying to contain the other. That both sides perceive threat, not the way Hitler saw perceived opportunity in 1939. But this became instituted in the United States during the Cold War, so that it just became the auto control policy in U.S. government that was in place, that became part of America's national identity, that then would be used by people like Richard Nixon and later Republicans to attack leftists, even though their own policies. Richard Nixon, for example, opened relations with communist China. It was under Richard Nixon, for example, that the United States agreed to sell millions of tons of grain, millions of food, tons of grain for making bread and feeding cows, corn and bread and wheat. Millions of tons of grain products. Grain produce was sold to the Soviet Union under Nixon because the Soviet Union wanted to needed that food in order to improve the diet of the Soviet people. Would the Americans really sell food to a country that they really collectively believed was trying to conquer the world, that was a terrible threat to them? Would the United States have sold millions of tons of wheat and corn to Nazi Germany in 1939? No. So even the Americans themselves, by the late 90s, when Nixon came into power in 1968, even there was a difference between the institutionalized rhetoric that had emerged over 25 years of the Cold War since the late 1940s, and the actual behavior of governments, beginning with John F. Kennedy, I think, in 1960, that continued, so that our own behavior, America's behavior, didn't match its words. But politicians knew what kind of words you needed to do to get elected, because stereotypes like the evil empire stereotype that we talked about last week, right, or last class, these are romantic, simplistic, emotion-generating, powerful symbols that that are simple and easy to manipulate. And particularly, the Americans did fight the Korean War, so they did get into a direct fight with communism, lose thousands of soldiers. We're told for those propaganda video I showed you in class, right, that had been going on for so many years, so that when the Cold War began to disintegrate in the 1960s, the Cold War began to become less and less and less intense beginning in the 1960s. So that, again, when Nixon comes to power in 1968, he can negotiate with Henry Kissinger, with the Soviet Union and China, agree to sell millions of tons of wheat and corn every year to the Soviet Union. But still, he's Richard Nixon, famous anti-communist. Richard Nixon, who stands up for capitalism and freedom against the evil socialists and radicals. So that becomes part of American, I don't like this term, but that term, part of American political culture. It's in terms of a set of symbols that people manipulate and use, right? But then it's used to attack the leftist movements. So it's like today, the Cold War ended over 30 years ago. So now young people today, they don't remember the Soviet Union. It's something that they never experienced in their life. It was half of my life, right? The Cold War. And, but there's now complaints about China because it's still the People's Republic of China under the Chinese Communist Party, and but that and there's even some kind of I almost said legacy, like, you know, when I listen to those Democracy Now! Broadcasts, you know, there's even some kind of legacy in that counterpunch. I showed you those counterpunch podcasts, you know, that there's some sympathy for Serbia when Serbia was bombed because it was a socialist government. There's even some sympathy. There's a lot of sympathy for Castro's Cuba. There's a lot of sympathy for Venezuela under Hugo Chavez and now under Nicolas Maduro. There's that Counterpunch podcast series. They don't talk much about China for some reason. Like, even though it's the Communist Party ruling the People's Republic of China, you would think there'd be more sympathy for, but they don't. The guy that runs that, he doesn't talk much at all about China, which is really weird. Right. But I have to think more about that. But but I think you could make that argument that basically the Vietnam War has polarized America intensely. So did the Algerian War in France. I mean, France is still dealing with the legacy of the Algerian War. I mean, you know, Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party, it was founded by her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who had been a paratrooper who fought in Algeria to try to crush the resistance there that failed after we don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people were killed. And then millions of French people had to leave Algeria and move back to France. And they're not happy about, you know, that humiliation. So the French have some kind of experience with this with Algeria. And, you know, but the Americans, you know, the one of the consequences of that is that it also inspired the rise of the new right, the alt-right. You know, I showed you that flag of that, you know, South Vietnam flag being flown in the Capitol during the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Congress. And, you know, I don't, you know, don't want to assume that young people are all naturally leftists, right? I mean, there's some, you know, among evangelicals, I mean, this notion of getting a good job through a booming economy is a powerful source of co-optation for certain groups in American society, including young people who want, you know, I mean, it's expensive to go to school, right? I mean, you know, the United States, young people, they have, not just young people, but people that go to college, typically, unless they join the Army or the military, the Marines, like my nephew did, I told you about him, right? The military will pay for your college tuition if you serve and are discharged honorably. You get the benefits. But student debt is now $1.6 trillion. So students owe $1,600 billion in debt through the US government program to allow people to take loans at lower interest rates to go to college. $1.6 trillion, $1,600 billion, $1.6 trillion. So you really are under a lot of pressure that you better get a good job. And that means you study business. It means you don't get into trouble. You don't devote your life to charity and activist work because you're not going to make enough money to pay off your debts. How are you going to pay off your debts that you got by taking loans to go to college? It's huge. It was a big issue for Joe Biden. $1.6 trillion. You know, college is free in Germany. You don't pay tuition to go to college in Germany, right? I think in England, under like 20 years ago, they raised it. It used to be free. Now it's like £1,000 a year or something. I don't know what it is. They forced them to start paying some money to go to college. But in the United States, you are under a tremendous pressure as a young person. You're going to go to college. You're going to focus on making sure you get a good job because you got to make money. Right? You got to making money to retire well. You got to make money to get a house, to live well. There's no such thing as guaranteed. Well, there is, but it's not high quality. So there are all these incentives that have been put in place to co-opt young people that you might want to work for social change, but you know, unless you're very weird, you're going to be pressured to make sure you get an income. And that means think about getting a good job, studying skills that people will hire and pay you for, not, going into social activism and social change. And the people that do that are desperate people. They're people that are angry. They're angry because they themselves are suffering. Like, people that are poor, that they haven't gotten these benefits that the American dream promises you. And so, they don't have much to lose, right? People that are marginalized people. So, people that are poor already and they have no chance of going to college, or they got a criminal record because they did something, because they come from a difficult background, they are people that are suffering from the consequences of pollution, living in poor areas where there's lots of pollution and pollution from factories, or people that are marginalized, they belong to sexual minorities and have been beat up and abused, or people that they don't already look unusual become involved in that activity. So that makes it even more difficult to be effective in working for social change, because the people that get involved in it, they're people, they don't look normal. They don't look and act like you and me. Because people like you and me, we get good jobs. And if you are poor, you can join the army, and like that's what we did, right? We turned the American military into one of the functions of the American military became a big social welfare instrument by which to co-opt the people from the poorest parts of American society who have some capacity, some promise, and you can. If you do well, you get discharged honorably. You're going to learn all about, of course, if you join the military, you're going to learn how to love America, because that's your job. You're supposed to fight for America. So you're probably going to be predisposed to think that way. Right. So let's hear the next statement. So, Yi Tong Wan, let's hear your pro statement, Yi Tong Wan.
America supported a lot, providing with troops or support the air bombing to help Vietnam. In the end, the aftermath of the war, America's economy and condition was pretty bad. A lot of leftists or something like that people emerged, and there were also strikes or rebellions in America to protest against war. From this moment, American left social movement probably seemed to start.
So you're saying that the Vietnam War was the main source of American left social movements today. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then how do you explain why these new left social movements began in other countries that were not at war at the same time, like in France and in Italy and in Germany and in Poland and in Czechoslovakia? No response?
I have to think a little more about that
Okay.
question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Im Chae-hoon, are you ready?
Yes. So the progressive refers to those who negatively evaluate the existing social order. And in the Vietnam War, US troops were sent to Vietnam, but they struggled a lot. So I think the United States must have been shocked by the failure of the war. Plus, it would have reminded people of the need to reconsider existing American society.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, in terms of comparing what's going on today, right? I mean, there was the Occupy Wall Street movement that emerged with the Great Recession and the financial crisis 12 years ago, Occupy Wall Street. But that sort of died away. It emerged in response to the greatest economic downturn since the Great Depression, right? And then the reason why there's, the Black Lives Matter movement, that began under Barack Obama, but that became a real strong national movement during the pandemic after Donald Trump had been elected in 2016. I mean, the fact that Donald Trump got elected, that's really, it's hard to overestimate the significance of that and why we need to, and the need to focus on that case, right? Because if America was doing okay in 2016, then how was he able to get elected? And it was again this new right social movement, right? That it was, this traditional American values were what won the Cold War. And including, traditional American values, of Christian values, of male patriarchy, that, the man is the head of the household, that, a marriage is between a man and a woman, and that, and you don't, and sex should not happen outside of holy matrimony. And if it does, you should at least be ashamed about it. And if you get pregnant, you can't get an abortion. And women, that these traditional values were under assault by these losers, these perceived losers who undermined America's effort to ultimately be successful in the Cold War. I mean, that Daniel Flynn perspective, right? And of course, you combine that with the fact that the way the US political system is set up by its constitution. So Donald Trump got 3 million votes less than Hillary Clinton and still won the presidency because of the way the US Electoral College system is set up, right? But this plus a combination, it's difficult to understand fully how Donald Trump was successful. There was, of course, this anger and resentment against banks and corporations, which the new left, the new right, the alt-right has also attacked, right? Because we talked about how, for example, the famous Woodstock concert that we talked about in class at Woodstock in New York in 1969, right? That was basically a big corporate event set up by Warner Brothers Records with all of those famous acts, and that iconic case of 300,000 young people coming together to celebrate music and peace, and it was Woodstock, right? It was a big corporate event, right? Making money off of these new left protests, of course, it took many years. By the way, it took 40 years for the people that organized Woodstock to turn a profit on that. Because the thing is that Woodstock concert, it was famous because it grew and grew and grew and got bigger and bigger and bigger without people expecting it. It was a phenomenon because so many people attended it, right? So like, if I open up this Woodstock conference, right, we showed you this before. I think you can see this, the Woodstock concert, right? That this was it exploded out of in terms of its size, and people people were moved. But this is all a corporate entity, a corporate company organized event, and so a lot of these new right social movements, they don't like corporations as well, particularly these corporations that try to be chic and modern by being so progressive in a way that makes money, right? So now if you're a big multinational corporation, you've got to be in favor of the LGBTQ rights. You've got to accommodate LGBTQ lifestyle. You can't be and you have to when there's a gay pride parade, you've got to participate in it as if you're a company, and your workers expect you to do that. Your employees expect you to do that. And this was the big event with in Florida. Ron DeSantis won re-election in the U.S. State of Florida in a landslide, and he he's going to challenge Trump probably for the presidential nomination for 2024 for the Republicans. He's the leader. We think he's going to run for president. He hasn't officially announced. Donald Trump may well announce that he's running for president, even though the Republican Party and his nominations didn't do as well as many people were thinking would happen in these latest congressional elections. So what did he do? He attacked Walt Disney Corporation because the Walt Disney Corporation, his government in Florida is refused to, for example, you're not allowed to teach, if in the school system, if you're a teacher, you can't talk about sexual orientation to your students, right? DeSantis is a 0 rating from the Human Rights Campaign for his voting records on LGBT-related issues and legislation. In 2018, he told the Sun Sentinel that he doesn't want any discrimination in Florida. I want people to be able to live their life, whether you're gay or whether you're religious. But he signed in 2021 the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. It bans transgender girls and women from participating and competing in high school and middle school and college women's sports competition in Florida. The law took effect in July 1. In February 2022, DeSantis voiced his support for the Florida Parental Rights and Education Act, often called the Don't Say Gay law, by its opponents, which would prohibit instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity in school classrooms from kindergarten to grade 3. He said it was entirely inappropriate for teachers and school administrators to talk to students about their gender identity. DeSantis signed the bill into law on March 28, 2022, and it took effect on July 1. In response to Walt Disney Company's opposition to the bill and amid an ongoing feud between DeSantis and Disney, DeSantis suggested Florida legislature revoke Disney World's special self-governing privileges over its 25,000-acre property, privileges granted the company in 1967. On April 22nd, 2022, he signed a bill to repeal the Reedy Creek Improvement Act, which allows Disney to self-govern its district by 2023. So this is popular, to attack those big corporations, because these big corporations, they think they have to be popularly progressive in a way that will be appealing to the Hollywood crowd of people that think it's chic and exciting to be progressively advanced. So there's a skepticism towards these big corporations as well, because these big corporations, they're trying to be global, and that means they have to be tolerant of multiple cultures. And that also reflects their desire also to, make their employees happy. So their employees, remember, 80% of our lives, my life, your life, is involved in our career, right? 80%. You think about everything that we do with the money that we make. 80% of our social interaction comes from our career. 80% of my social interaction with human beings is economically based. 80%. You think about, anything that I do involves money, even if it's politically oriented or it's, political science, it still involves some economic activity. So these corporations, they want their workers to be, motivated, and they want to hire workers that are good with people, and they might be gay. And so these people so these corporations, a lot of these corporations are nicely progressive. And they have money, and these people on the right, that supported Trump, are rejecting them as well. These big corporations, these woke corporations, right? Wokeness. So there's this. It's basically a hostility to diversity and globalization. That these corporations are mechanisms or venues for undermining the traditional American values. The traditional American values that won the Cold War, remember, and saved the world from totalitarianism, from socialism. These same groups argue we have to remind people that the communists killed more people than the fascists, that Stalinism and left-wing authoritarianism is just as brutal and no better than right-wing Nazi authoritarianism. So, that's the, okay, so back to the question about we're running out of time here. So let's see, who else is not left to speak? And we'll talk more about the election in the next class. So I think that's Cho Chun Sok. Are you ready? There's Cho Chun Sok. He's not there. Cho Chun Sok. Well, Khan, you have you're the only one person that's left. Do you have a final word, Lee Chun Ho? Lee Chun Ho, are you there?
Last word.
Yeah. No?
Well, I think the pros statement were also very convincible, but I believe, like as Professor mentioned, like every is like there are so many things happening around the world. The Vietnam War would be not the only one event that can be a main source of American leftist idea. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so let me then again ask you to vote anonymously on whether or not you think the American Vietnam War is the main source of American left social movements today, and go back to vote and add and go to here. And this and end of the 12 and this post result and pro on neutral cannot decide. Okay, and we go save. And okay, so now, oh shit, wait a second. I gotta make this anonymous. So I'll make it anonymous. Okay, so now it's anonymous. So please vote to see if anybody changed their view on the debate topic. You can see that, right? And so three. Oh, I got one con, still one con, still only one con. Anybody else? Two con. Oh no, still one con, still only one con. Although we have two undecided, so that I guess is a significant indicator of the impact of the debate. Okay, so that's everybody there. So let me then go back and see what else I have lined up to talk about here in today's count. I'll close that. And let me go to the material here. Let's see what I got here. Yeah. Yeah. I guess what I want to highlight is that in the 2 minutes remaining, which is not really enough time to talk about this, but you know, this is well, yeah, I'm not gonna have time to talk about this, but this is a hierarchy of needs to explain how societies grow and develop, which basically, it's Abraham Maslow was a psychologist who studied human beings, and this has got a lot of problems in it, but this framework or this viewpoint has some validity when we talk about societies, right? That societies that are poor and violent, people's orientations and focuses on that societies tend to focus on the basic need of not being killed, safety, right? And then once you take for granted that you don't have to worry about being shot or stabbed or killed when you step out of your door every day, then you tend to focus on creating a situation where you have some degree of stability and security in your life by particularly getting a job and getting an income and being able to take care of yourself. So some degree of security. Once that's taken for granted, human beings move to other values, right, in this hierarchy of needs. So once you take for granted that you're safe and secure, people start in their behavior will reflect a concern with the quality of their relationships. Love, right? The quality of your relationships, quality of your social relationships with people. It doesn't mean just romantic love, it means just like, having satisfying human interactions. And then And once you take that for granted, like you are people that admire and respect you, people tend to focus upon, career goals, getting prestige and public recognition for their achievements. And that's and that recognition gives you self-esteem. Like people say, I am worth something. So, and then once you take for granted that you have your ability to gain self-esteem, then you can more likely focus upon yourself as an individual, a unique individual with your own unique demands and needs, and that's self-actualization. So there's a hierarchy of needs here. Basically, with the growth and development of industrialized societies like France and the United States, society has moved to a position where these needs become more important in driving people's behavior in politics and in social movements, right? Nationalism tends to associate with these needs, satisfying these basic needs here, right? And so, but we'll have to stop there and end that for today and talk more about that next class. So that's all then, okay? So talk to you later, bye.
Thank you.